If you've ever wondered why someone's pornography use seems to get worse over time, more frequent, more extreme content, more hours consumed, you're not alone. And if you're struggling with this yourself, what I'm going to explain will help you understand why willpower alone hasn't worked. I'm Dr. Chris Samuels, and I've been treating porn addiction for more than 30 years. And one of the inevitable problems I see is escalation. People don't set out to spend hours every day viewing increasingly extreme content. So, how does that happen? This isn't about moral weakness. It's about how your brain works. People don't develop problematic pornography use because they're uniquely flawed or oversexed. They develop it because they discovered, often as adolescents, that sexual arousal provides powerful relief from emotional pain. If you grew up feeling lonely, anxious, overwhelmed, or emotionally neglected, you were carrying pain you didn't know how to manage. Then you discovered pornography. For the first time, you found something that made you feel good instantly, required nobody else, was completely private, and worked every single time. It wasn't really about sex. It was about escape, about soothing yourself when nothing else worked. This is why trauma histories are so common in people who struggle with compulsive porn use. The pornography became their primary way to cope with stress, loneliness, anxiety, shame, whatever feelings they hadn't learned to tolerate. Sexual arousal triggers the release of dopamine, a brain chemical that's part of your reward and motivation system. Dopamine creates feelings of pleasure and anticipation, and it's triggered by novelty. It's the same system activated by food when you're hungry or by drugs like cocaine. Dopamine isn't bad. It's essential for survival. The problem is that internet pornography hijacks this system in a way that natural rewards never could. In the natural world, dopamine spikes when you encounter something rewarding, then levels off as you adapt. You eat a good meal, you feel satisfied. The dopamine response decreases. Your brain says, we got what we needed. But internet pornography is different. You can click to a new image, a new video, a new partner every few seconds. Every click triggers a fresh dopamine spike. Your brain never adapts because you're being offered infinite novelty. Click, spike, click, spike, click, spike. Your brain is getting flooded with dopamine in a way it was never designed to handle. When your brain is repeatedly flooded with dopamine, it protects itself by reducing the number of dopamine receptors. This is called downregulation. Think of it like adapting to a loud noise. You learn not to really hear it. What this means for you? The same content that used to produce a strong response now produces a weaker one. You've developed tolerance. This is exactly what happens with drug addiction. Someone who starts using cocaine gets a huge high from a small amount. 6 months later, they need much more to get the same effect. With pornography, the same thing happens. The content that once felt intensely arousing now feels boring. So what do? You escalate. You seek out new content, more extreme content, content you wouldn't have been interested in 6 months ago. Maybe content that actually disturbs you, but it's novel, and novelty triggers dopamine. This is why people often find themselves viewing material that doesn't match their sexual orientation or their values. They're not looking for what actually turns them on. They're looking for what their desensitized brain can still respond to. Meanwhile, natural rewards, sex with a real partner, meaningful activities, simple pleasures, start feeling less rewarding. Compared to the dopamine flood from pornography, everything else seems dull. You're trapped in a cycle. Your brain needs more stimulation to feel normal, so you use more pornography, which further desensitizes your brain, which requires even more stimulation. You started using pornography to cope with difficult emotions. It worked. It provided relief. But over time, your brain adapted. So you increased frequency from weekly to daily to multiple times daily. You increased duration from 15 minutes to an hour to 3 hours. And you escalated content, moving to more extreme material, not because you wanted to, but because you needed novelty to trigger the dopamine response your brain now craves. Meanwhile, the original emotional pain you were trying to escape, it's still there. Plus, now you have shame about your pornography use, relationship problems, difficulty functioning at work, isolation. You're trying to escape pain by using pornography, which creates more pain, which drives more pornography use. And you can't just stop because your brain's reward system has been rewired. This is why people say, I've tried to quit 100 times and I can't. It's not lack of willpower. Your brain has been fundamentally changed. Now, why do some people get trapped and others don't? The dopamine response happens in everyone's brain when they view pornography, but not everyone becomes a porn addict. Why? Because addiction isn't just about exposure, it's about what you're using it for. If you have other ways to manage stress and difficult emotions, secure relationships, healthy coping mechanisms, emotional support, you're less likely to rely on pornography as your primary source of relief. But if you grew up with childhood trauma or neglect, insecure attachment, chronic loneliness, or untreated anxiety or depression, pornography becomes much more than entertainment. It becomes your primary relationship, your main source of comfort and emotional regulation. That's when the tolerance and escalation become a trap instead of just a temporary experience. Age at first exposure matters too. A 14-year-old doesn't have the brain hardwire, a mature prefrontal cortex to regulate impulses or evaluate long-term consequences. If pornography becomes their primary coping mechanism during these developmental years, the pathway to addiction is much more likely. So it's not that some people are morally stronger, it's that some people are more vulnerable based on their history and what role pornography plays in their emotional life. Here's the good news. Even if you've gotten trapped in this cycle, recovery is absolutely possible. The brain can heal. These changes are reversible. The brain is remarkably plastic. If you stop flooding it with dopamine, it will gradually heal. Dopamine receptors will upregulate. Your reward circuitry will recalibrate. Natural pleasures will start feeling rewarding again, but it takes time. Most people need at least 90 days of complete abstinence to see significant changes. Full rewiring can take 6 to 12 months or longer, depending on how long you've been using. During that time, you'll go through withdrawal, anxiety, irritability, depression, intense cravings. This is your brain adjusting to normal dopamine levels after years of artificial flooding. This is hard, and this is why recovery isn't just about stopping the behavior. You have to address the underlying emotional pain that made you vulnerable in the first place. You have to develop new coping mechanisms. You have to learn that connection with real people can actually be safe. You need support, therapy, 12-step groups, accountability. But again, the brain can heal. I've watched it happen hundreds of times. People trapped in this cycle for decades can break free. Their capacity for real intimacy can develop. Their interest in life can return. If you're struggling with pornography use that's escalated beyond your control, I want you to understand this isn't a moral failing. This is your brain responding predictably to supernormal stimuli when you were vulnerable and didn't have other ways to cope. But you're not powerless. Recovery is possible when you understand what you're dealing with and get the right support. And if you're watching because someone you love is struggling, this explanation doesn't excuse the betrayal or minimize your pain, but it can help you see that this isn't about you being insufficient. This is about his brain getting trapped in a cycle that started long before you. If this video was helpful, please like and subscribe. I'll be sharing more content on sex and porn addiction recovery and the science behind healing. And if you're ready to take the first step, whether for yourself or supporting someone you love, reach out for help. You don't have to do this alone. Thanks for watching. I wish you well.